South Africa, where he said that there is the need for a fair playing ground in terms of trade, and then the state or the order where only one country calls the shot needs to be balanced. So this is a very critical conversation. We've seen China, we've seen Putin speaking there, we've had South Africa's president also speaking there. So these are not just mere situations. Very soon we'll be hearing the case where they are interestingly calling for the use of a common digital currency, still using the crypto as a baseline. But we'll surely be following up to bring you more update on whether the use of the blockchain technology is something that is quite viable. Possibly they need to diversify the whole procedure to ensure that most countries in trade obscurity is well handled. So we have been joined on Zoom by the director of the Africa-China Center for Policy and Advisory, Paul Frimpong, who is executive director, to give us more insights on this particular development. Good afternoon and welcome to Metro Business Week. Hello, Paul. Kindly unmute. Kindly unmute. Kindly unmute. Okay. So if we've been following the invitation being extended to some countries such as Saudi Arabia, some North African countries to join the BRICS, but we want to understand, how does this reflect on the African economies compared to their relationship with the Western players?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think leading to the 15th BRICS Summit in Johannesburg earlier, it was, the new membership, addition or acceptance into the BRICS was one of the key issues on the agenda. Apart from that, of course, leading to that, we had issue around Putin's representation, whether he is obliged to attend in person, and when he does, what will be the obligation on South Africa. So that was one of the key issues. And then, of course, the issue about the currency. Some people projecting that there could be a new currency announced by the BRICS. And then the other major issue was about the new members that have lined up to join the BRICS. So when you track all those related issues, of course, the Putin one was resolved even before the main event happened, which is why the Foreign Secretary Sergei Lavrov represented President Putin in the summit. Now, when it came to the new membership of the BRICS, as you can see, if you look at just the profile and the location of the new member that returned to the BRICS, you can see that these are very strategic economies in their own respective right. That the BRICS, has the founding members of the BRICS are actually admitted into the bloc. But then again, you can also understand why they have to be very cautious. So in as much as about 40 or so countries have expressed interest in joining the BRICS, and 23 actually applied and they accepted the 6, you can understand why, because this is an evolving bloc, right? So they wanted to make sure that they're very careful so that you don't get overwhelmed by the numbers in terms of people that have shown interest. Remember, the BRICS is actually, hinging their momentum, their positive enthusiasm as a result of their position in respect of the current world order, which is, it is not fair that the entire world, especially where you have majority of the world living in developing emerging markets, having been dictated to by just a few developed countries, right? So that has been one of the key tenets of the BRICS countries, that it's about time we change that kind of system. So obviously, they are also aware of not falling into that trap of a situation where, at the end of the day, are we going to have just the BRICS founding members being the key decision makers of the bloc, which then also puts them back in where we are now, which is why we have a situation where we have a few countries that are actually dictating the world order. So they are very circumspect of this situation. So you can understand why they're very strategic. Now look at the countries. Let's go deeper into the countries that were admitted, right? So talking about Argentina. Argentina is the second largest economy in the Southern America, apart from Brazil. Brazil is already a founding member of the BRICS, right? We talk about Iran, natural gas reserve in the world. Of course, you talk about Saudi Arabia, number one, oil producer. Egypt, access to the canal. Egypt is one of the largest countries in Africa, so over 100 million people. Ethiopia, the same, one of the largest, countries on the continental population size. So you can see how strategic these countries are in terms of their position in the emerging market. Now, Egypt and Ethiopia, again, in the context of Africa, apart from Nigeria, you have Nigeria, there's over 200 million people. These are almost the next, largest countries on the continent in terms of population, even in terms of GDP and all of that. So you can see how strategic these countries are in terms of their position on the African continent.
All right, we want to understand, and you've made quite clear the key interest being expressed by why these countries are invited. Now, I want to focus on the, how to call it, the Arab countries. We know Arab Emirates, we know Iran. These countries are key oil suppliers worldwide. Does that mean there's going to be a change in terms of geo-oil policy? We know what the U.S. plays in terms of global supply. Are there going to be a new change in how things will be done very soon? Should all these countries decide to join completely the BRICS countries?
I think there are going to be new conversations, in so many fronts of our world, going forward, as a result of this BRICS momentum, right? So we're going to be experiencing a lot of new conversations, new trade, related, conversations as a result of this BRICS, right? So obviously, as the BRICS started, people actually didn't give them the kind of credit that they are receiving now. And because of the momentum that is being built now, we get a lot of attention on what the BRICS can actually do and achieve. Fundamentally, it's clear they are in to change the kind of system that we find ourselves in, right? So they're trying to see how they can come up with a balanced than the one we find ourselves in. And when you talk about the oil, the natural gas, and all these are very critical, aspects of our world today. Policies and programs are being shaped around our world based around some of these related issues. So obviously, it is a key part of the conversation that will be happening as a result of the BRICS.
All right.
So changes in currency is going to happen as a result of the BRICS. Trade, negotiation related instruments are going to be discussed as a result of the BRICS. Definitely issues around natural resources like oil and gas is going to also be, the rules around it is also going to be rewritten. Because as you mentioned, these new members that are admitted, Iran, natural gas, Saudi, oil producer, the number one oil producer in the world, obviously being part of the bloc. We have Russia there being a huge part of the natural gas as well, supplying a lot of gas to Europe and all of that. So there is going to be a shift in the kind of system that we have that is evolving around these natural resources, or definitely because of this membership addition into the BRICS bloc.
I'll come back to you shortly. We have also been joined by Mr. Frimpong Dlamini, who is a Pan-Africanist, a legal, cultural, and human rights activist, speaking to us from South Africa. Welcome, Dlamini, to Metro Business Week.
Thank you for having us, my brother, and good evening. Good afternoon to your viewers at home.
Great. South Africa was the first country to join the BRICS. Can you tell us the inspiration behind that and why you believe the leadership of South Africa makes it necessary for other African countries to follow suit?
Well, yes, of course. It is true that South Africa was the first African country to join the bloc. But remember that we come from a colonization of a special type, and a colonization that has a way of perpetuating itself, because the colonization that Africa and South Africa in particular had is that of ensuring that Africa and Africans, the indigenous people, don't improve and they don't enjoy the benefits of their minerals beneath and above the soil. So it was a colonization, a systematic colonization that ensures that we are kept inferior and the West is kept superior. So then there was a need for Africa to break from those shackles that seeks to make us slaves in our own land, and that seeks to ensure that we don't enjoy any freedom and enjoy the fruits of our God-given minerals. So that is what then led to the then leadership of Jacob Zuma to say, how do we break this colonization? How do we then break from these neoliberal policies and neocolonialist policies? Then there was this alternative, which is an alternative of countries that are already castigated and outcast from the system of imperialism and the West. So they came as an alternative.
So, well, with this direction being taken by South African government, most countries' leadership take the initiative, but the whole agenda, especially domestically, there are some school of thought that may say that South Africa might have taken the wrong step. Is that the case in South Africa now, or everyone is behind the agenda?
Now, remember that everything that is new, people are always scared and skeptical of change. And also remember the damage of colonialism and apartheid and the system of education that we consume. It seeks to make us it produces laborers for white people. The education, the institutions that we go to colonizes us yet again. The danger that we have and the damage that we have in Africa is the mind. We need to decolonize the mind. We need to break the chains of slavery. So the fear is that the system, because remember, BRICS is breaking a system that has been there for years, a system that is able to defend itself using our own people, the system that produces a white man in a black body. We have leaders who think like white people. We have black leaders whom their entire existence seeks to defend whiteness and defend the West. So that's the damage that we have and the danger that we have. They will never see anything good that seeks to fight with whiteness and imperialism and anything that has to do with the US. So that is where the danger is. We have been having African leaders who are neo-colonialists. We have been having African leaders who are neoliberals, who are corrupt to the core. They don't care about the country. They don't care about the people of Africa. You find individuals who are now rich as politicians, richer than the countries they lead. That is where we are today, and that is what Western system seeks to do. It elevates some amongst us, not all of us. It elevates certain few that they will use to control the anger of the majority of the poor black people. We have never benefited from our relationship with the West. As African people, we have never benefited anything from our colonial masters as Africa.
I'll come back to you. Please stay on. Let me go back to Paul Frimpong, who is director for the Africa Center for China Advisory Policy. Paul, if you can hear me, we have seen the structure of the BRICS nations. The key issue that most researchers and analysts fear might happen is a recreation of the system that we were trying to fight from or run away from, because the African countries are perceived have not built their economies compared to Russia, compared to China, compared to India, who have a very solid structure and can be quantified in terms of what they bring to the table. What do you think Africa now can bring to the table when it comes to trade?
So I believe that, I think, again, the rhetoric and the kind of momentum that the BRICS bloc is receiving, especially from developing economies like all countries in Africa, is that kind of platform that is trying to be different from the one that countries are used to. So what the BRICS bloc is presenting is that we are all going to be around a table that, of course, the size of your economy, whether in terms of population, whether in terms of GDP size, whether you're $1 trillion economy or $1 billion economy, whether you are a 1 million populated country or you are 1.4 billion populated country, irrespective of your size, irrespective of your location, you're going to have a voice. You're going to be fairly represented. You're going to be part of a system that is very balanced in terms of how decisions are made, in terms of how commitments are made towards those decisions, right? So that is what the BRICS has been presenting. And if you can also see the numbers in terms of countries that are actually showing interest and applying to join the BRICS, as you said earlier, that shows that layout plan of the BRICS, that we want to build a system that is different from the one that we are used to. A system that brings equal voice to the table is actually something that is very achievable. And that is why you've seen all these countries actually join. And remember, even you look at all the countries, of course, all the countries, almost all the countries that have applied to join the BRICS are from developing countries. And developing countries or emerging market makes almost 80% of the global population, right? So all countries in the global south makes about over 80% of the global population. So if you can see these numbers, all trying to have a voice around a new global, remember, I said earlier that there are going to be new shifts in so many aspects of our global system going forward because of this BRICS momentum. The global financial system is going to change in a very fundamental way. The development financing system is going to change in a very fundamental way. Access to Britain, world institutional funding like the IMF, the World Bank, that are going to be alternatives that are going to challenge some of these entrenched, development finance system or global financial system that, according to most developing countries, according to all countries in Africa, has not been fair to them in terms of how they access some of these funding and the kind of conditions that they have to meet in order to access those kind of financial support. The oil and the petroleum sector industry is going to change fundamentally as a result of this. So for me, I think going forward, we're going to see a new shift in so many aspects.
You've repeated shift for like 3 times in this particular response. I want to get to see in instances where, for instance, 2 countries who are all subscribed to the bloc happen to have conflict amongst them, just as what is happening between Russia and Ukraine. How will it sit with the other countries in the face of the United Nations, which could not handle certain conflict resolution measures amicably compared to BRICS? Can BRICS be that final say, and would they be able to accumulate that sort of authority to determine how things play out and the outcome of economic trajectory?
Yeah, I believe that there are going to be nuances, new dimension when it comes to conflict resolution around the world. Earlier on, I think based on your previous introduction, you mentioned about how China was able to broker a deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran under the China's Global Security Initiative, which is a new initiative by China that seeks to track and bring solution to conflict without lifting an arm, right? So that happened between Iran and Saudi, and now we've seen the 2 of them joining the BRICS. So I believe that the BRICS is also going to lay down, because as the countries increases, the complexity also will also be shown, because obviously it's not going to be as smooth as we are seeing now. There's going to be major conflicts. As you remember, even India is a very strong voice when it comes to issues even regarding their relation with China, regarding their relation with Brazil, or even South Africa, right? So those tensions are going to be there. They're going to emerge. Those conflicts are going to emerge one way or the other, because as you mentioned, as the countries increase, there's going to be that those levels of conflict.
All right.
But I believe that with the new approach, which is being even used by China to resolve conflicts around the world, I believe that these countries find a way to be on the same track.
All right, Paul, I'll return back to you shortly. You're watching Metro Business Week live on Metro TV. We are also live across all social media handles. You can phone into the show on the numbers that have been displayed on your screens, and make sure you make your submissions as brief as possible. We know this is an interesting development. We'll try as much as possible to bring you insight on the BRICS development all across Africa, and we look at the economy, we look at various angles that are critical for national development, because in as much as you know, once your country has subscribed to it, you are automatically part of it. So if you're a Ghanaian, just get ready. You are also part of the BRICS bloc, just as many other African countries. So you can call into the show and let's hear from you. If you're watching us from Tamale, you're watching us from South Africa, watching us from Nigeria, we are still on DSTV, channel 277 here on Metro TV. My name is Winston Taki. Let's go straight back to Dlamini, who is from South Africa, a Pan-Africanist. Dlamini, if you're there, you raise key issues that has to do with corruption, saying that if we can change our mindset and how we handle corruption, we can be ready to sit at the same table with these big players who we know and understand their economies are strong. But before I get to Dlamini, we have Suyini, who is calling me from Tamale. Suyini, you're live on Metro TV.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Can you go ahead?
Yes, I think that it's it would be a good idea on my part that Ghana should be joining BRICS. If we find out that the state we've gotten to ourselves today as a country, I think that it is good time we joined the bloc nations in order to be able to resolve our economic challenges. What is important for us to know as a country is that the development and growth of ourselves depends on the friendship we have with foreign nations. And I think that America has not been good to us. For me, America has not been good to Ghana per se and most African states. Where we've gotten today, if we find friends who will be able to help us revive and solve our economic problems and make the citizens worthy of having their business to flourish, that would be a good way to go. So for my part, I think that it is time that Ghana should join the BRICS and to make our economic woes better and to make life better for the citizens of this country.
Thank you very much, Suyini. We are grateful for your submission. You can as well forward into the show and let's hear your take. Is it necessary for Ghana to join the BRICS, or how do you perceive African countries' states might be should they subscribe to the bloc? And so this is a very open conversation we need to be having now, and we're having it now on Metro Business Week. Let me go back to Dlamini. Dlamini, I'm wondering whether should we try as much as possible to eradicate systematic corruption, we can be able to play on the same table with these big countries. All right, I think the callers are making it quite insightful. But before I get to Dlamini, Thomas from Blekuma just phoned in. Thomas, you're live on Metro Business.
All right, thank you very much. Good afternoon to your listeners.
Go ahead.
Yes, I want to say something about the BRICS nations. You know, in my opinion, I think BRICS is the best group that the world can have today. And in my opinion, I think it is best for Ghana to join BRICS rather than to always looking at the European Union, America, and the Western countries. Because if we look at the situation even in Ukraine, you can see clearly what is playing in Ukraine. This is the plan the plan of the West, especially. I mean, the plan. What do you call it? Something that is led by the United States, and you can see clearly that any nation that's United States and their Western nations set their eyes on them, like Libya, like Iraq.
All right.
All these nations collapse.
Okay, Thomas.
So in my opinion, I think Ghana should join BRICS immediately.
Okay, Thomas.
Development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Wow.
We appreciate your insights as well as anyone watching us from anywhere. We are live on Facebook as well. But let me go back to Dlamini. Dlamini, still on the corruption-related African countries. Yeah, African countries. Let me take your final words from Dlamini. Dlamini, if you're there, I want to hear from you.
Yes, thank you, my brother. I think the issue here that we shouldn't run away from as Africans, especially as young people, is to speak about why is Africa where it is today with everything that we have. And we've been having leaders for all this time. So our biggest problem is our leaders, is the people that lead us, is the people who sit on the table with the leaders of the world. What do they say when they are sitting in those tables with the other leaders of the world? Because we are what our leaders want us to be. Africa will be great as long as the leaders we elect. What type of leaders represent us in these global stages? What do they do when they get there? What do they talk about when they get there? You look at our leaders, you look at the leaders from Europe, you look at the behavior and posture of a lot of African leaders, you see that this thing is going to sell us when it sits in front of white people. We have leaders that hero worship whiteness and white people. Those are the people who are not able to go there and push the interest of Africa. When you go to the table with China and Russia, they come to the table carrying the interest of a Chinese child.
All right.
And Russia is carrying the interest of a Russian child. What interest does Africa have? And what interest are we pursuing? Because we can say BRICS is good. BRICS can be good. But what interest are we going in there with so that we can be able to say, we have achieved this, we have achieved that?
Okay, Dlamini.
You see, because that's our problem.
Okay, thank you very much, Dlamini. We are grateful to have you on Metro Business Week. We'll subsequently be engaging you on more development there. We have also Nuruddin from Afenya who is joining us on phone. Nuruddin, you're live on Metro Business Week.
Thank you for the opportunity. I think on my part, Africa needs to chart our own path. The idea of BRICS is a good idea, but we've dreamed of this Africa coming together to create our own currency. I think that dream is what we need to pursue.
All right.
Because we have a lot of resources. We need to harness our resources and think about ourselves internally. Yes, the idea of BRICS is good, but I still believe that there's still some element of colonial mentality in it. And we need to think as Africans, think of how to solve our own problems instead of always relying on ideas generated by the West.
Okay.
Yes.
Nuruddin, we appreciate your insight as well. Let me take final words from Paul Frimpong, who is the director for the Africa-China Center for Policy and Advisory. Paul, in the face of the AFTA conversation, the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement and the whole trade prospects and Agenda 2063, with the BRICS coming into light, where should we see the United Front for Trade for Africa? And also, whilst answering that, let's get your final word on the BRICS outlook.
Yeah, I think even the president of Ghana did mention the remarks, getting to the end of the remarks about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and the BRICS, right? So for Africa, I mean, we see the BRICS bloc as a new a system that can give us more voice than we are used to in the current system that we find ourselves in, right? So, of course, you have in there China, which is your largest trading partner for over a decade now. So China is in there in terms of trade. We are talking about trying to find an alternative source of financing, right? And clearly, the BRICS is trying to offer that alternative source of financing, development financing. So typically when a country in Africa will go to the World Bank for development finance or the IFC or the IMF for that, now you have what we call the new development bank, formerly the BRICS Bank, which is trying to offer that alternative source of financing and development. And remember, the AFTA also needs some level of development finance. So for me, I believe that the AFTA and the BRICS, there's definitely going to be at the point where Africa can leverage on the African continental free area to be able to benefit more from the BRICS.
Well, we appreciate your time, and we'll surely be engaging on this particular development because BRICS is not ending now. This is just the beginning, and we'll be building out from there. We are still watching Metro Business Week. We are taking a short break. We'll be back with more. Stay tuned.